Hi, I'm Josh Van Dyke, Vice President of North American Sales at SenShare, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Richard and Natalie of Lands' End. Richard is the Senior Director of Creative Operations at Lands' End. He's had over 20 years of experience in managerial roles at Lands' End, most recently actually managing the Creative Operations team, which has over 40 members, and really making sure he's working with them for maximum effectiveness and efficiency. And one of the things he was in charge of was implementing a sophisticated DAM system in SenShare, as well as a new avatar-based, image-based technology called Looklet, which he'll talk about in a little bit. Natalie is their digital asset manager. And the cool thing about Natalie is she has over a decade of DAM experience in a variety of different industries. And I would say, during her time as the DAM manager, she's really successfully elevated the presence and the importance of DAM within the organization and really recognizes its strategic solution. She's always working with different teams in order to really expand, add new workflows and make everybody's lives better who's using the DAM. And today they're going to be speaking about Lands' End's DAM Advantage. So thanks for joining us today. I know you've got a lot of knowledge and experience to share with everyone. So thanks for presenting with us today.
Thanks, Josh, for having us. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome.
Yep. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So for those of you in the audience who aren't familiar with Lands' End, they're actually a leading global retailer of casual clothing, accessories, footwear, and even home products. They were founded over 50 years ago and really initially making sailing gear. So that's where their roots are. But their product line has clearly evolved over time. And the products are available on landsend.com, through their owner-operated retail stores, through third-party marketplaces and third-party retail stores. They have a really strong presence internationally in the US, UK, Germany, France, and Japan. And personally, as someone who grew up not too far from Lands' End in the Midwest, I would kind of describe Lands' End as like classic American lifestyle brand, really kind of synonymous with quality, value, and delivering these timeless styles for men and women and children. And so, let's go ahead. I would say let's dive in, but really let's set sail on your journey and how you kind of came to SenShare and how you're using it now. So, Richard, we've known each other for a few years because I was involved with, several years ago when you started this process. But maybe you could tell the audience, prior to using SenShare, what was your team's process like?
Well, Josh, the prior system before SenShare was in place for about 15 years, and it was basically an asset repository. We used a product that was provided by our main print vendor to mostly manage images and facilitate catalog page production because Lands' End is a major cataloger in our advertising. The system and process worked for several years, but it became static and led to legacy and outdated processes, and we knew we needed a change.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. I mean, maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and the audience about, what were the changes that you were facing that you say, gosh, we really need a solution. This just isn't sustainable.
Yeah, a few years ago, we recognized there's some changes coming, which we had to really improve our technology. And the prior DAM system didn't have the capabilities to expand the scope and scalability into the digital marketplace, managing increased volume and different types of assets. In addition, it couldn't integrate with other sophisticated MarTech systems. And finally, a company vision was to automatically provide content based on customer behaviors, which this system could not support. The system didn't have the planned future capabilities, which naturally led us on a search for a better solution.
Yeah, and we see that oftentimes with people coming off of a legacy system and they have old antiquated ways of doing things, and that can be a challenge. It presents its own set of challenges. Oftentimes in that, because you aren't able to advance the technology, there's a lot of wasted time. There's manual activities that still happen, manual workflows, whatnot. So I'm not sure if you were tracking some of that before or have some metrics around any kind of time saving or things or time wasted, I guess, too. So is there anything like that you have to share?
Yeah, we were encountering that quite a bit in the last few years. As mentioned, the prior asset repository had limited capabilities. The users experienced ongoing system issues and inefficiencies, including slow search returns for images. In fact, a little story, designers said they would go to lunch and launch a search for images or group of images, hoping that those images would be returned when they came back from lunch.
Okay. Nice. And by the way, you probably, I think you looked at a lot of different vendors. How many vendors were you looking at initially?
Well, we looked at the whole scope of vendors, but then we identified 5 that we focused on and then narrowed it down to 2 for a proof of concept and ultimately selected SenShare.
Okay, good. So you identified your problems, you found a platform that met those needs and allowed you to kind of grow into the future. And then you have, hey, I got to make sure we get, internal buy-in, especially executive buy-in. So tell me a little bit about that story and that process of how did you get executive buy-in from your leadership?
Yeah, and it was really facilitated by a change of leadership within the company. When our new CEO, Jerome Griffith, joined about 4 years ago, 2 of his primary initiatives were for Lands' End to be a digitally driven organization, and the second, have an improved infrastructure and processes. A significantly improved and sophisticated dam system was the first MarTech system targeted by executive leadership to improve our marketing technology.
Okay.
Nevertheless, as you mentioned, we had to get buy-in for the system. So we had to financially justify the value of the new dam system to the organization's leadership, including our chief financial officer, by providing a detailed and robust business case for improved efficiencies, effectiveness, and positive impact to company profit. And here we are today.
There you go. Well, I'd love to see a little bit more how you're using the system, and I'm sure our audience would as well. So Natalie, as the dam manager, you're in there every day in and day out, all the time. Maybe you could share with us a little bit about that. I think you have a presentation prepared. So if you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Yep. Good. You can see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So to get us started here, I thought we'd begin with a little history of DAM then and now. Going all the way back to the beginning, Lands' End was first founded in 1963. In 1990, Lands' End moved its headquarters to Dodgeville, Wisconsin. By 1995, we launched our first, our core website. And then in 2004, by 2004, Lands' End started managing digital assets in a formal and organized way with a dedicated digital asset management system, the one that Richard spoke of earlier. 15 years later, in 2019, it was time for a dam upgrade. So executive leadership recognized that in order to remain competitive in the global retail marketplace, we needed a sophisticated enterprise digital asset management system that supported our catalog print production processes, but also enabled ongoing and expanding business opportunities. So after a lengthy and thorough vetting process with demos and proof of concepts, SenShare really stood out with its print production management and creative production workflow capabilities. So fast forward to today, and SenShare is up and running now fully since 2019. As of March 31st of this year, we're now hosting a little over 2 million assets in our dam, which adds up to about 25 terabytes of data. Of these assets, 75% are images, about 15 to 20% are catalog or catalog related, and also other documents that are being routed in our dam. So PDPs are one thing that we route in addition to catalog pages, and PDPs are product description pages. And then 5 to 10% of the remaining assets are videos, illustrations, and some miscellaneous other. We are also managing over 20,000 unique global catalog pages. So what were and are our dam objectives with Senshare? Well, we needed an enterprise dam solution that could support our high-level company goals of 1, improving infrastructure and processes, 2, being a uni-channel company and really providing a unified Lands' End customer experience, and 3, being a digitally driven company. So to align our new dam to the company goals and support our overarching dam strategy of building an enterprise dam solution, we created a strategic framework, organizing all of our priorities and initiatives into 3 strategic drivers or pillars that ladder up to our high-level company goals. The pillars that you see here are optimize, maximize, and innovate. Within optimization, we're looking to evaluate, iterate, and refine. So we're looking at all of those dam workflows and dam processes that we've set up over the last year or 2, and really evaluate how they're meeting the needs of today. And then we're optimizing by iterating and refining those processes. With maximize, we're looking at where and how can we expand the capabilities of our dam so that we can deliver on the goal of a unified Lands' End customer experience, both internally and externally. And thirdly, how can we leverage our dam to innovate? We have to reimagine how we work so that we can continually advance Lands' End as a digitally driven company. Looking at some of the specific things or projects that we're planning in each area or each pillar, these are the things that are on our roadmap. In the area of optimization, we have reviewed the dam maturity model. We completed this activity back in March, and we had really great feedback and actionable takeaways from the exercise. I highly recommend conducting a dam maturity evaluation periodically. We're also taking a look at all the processes that we put into place since the rollout of Senshare over the last year or so that we can continue to make those improvements. In the area of maximizing dam capabilities, we're looking at expanding the scope of assets. How do we define an asset and what belongs in the dam that isn't there today? Also, how can we leverage metadata to manage rights for our licensed art and models, model usage rights? What can we do with the metadata management to potentially create some automations in the future? Is there a way to trigger some kind of automated process whenever a model expires? Also, how can we facilitate greater growth in the global Lands' End marketplace? In the area of innovation, we'll be exploring and leveraging business relationships and technological synergies. Where can we and should we integrate to advance Lands' End as a digitally driven company? For example, is there an opportunity to integrate with third-party marketplace vendor dams to flow images back and forth? Also, what other scalable and replicable workflows can we integrate with our vendors, such as the one we're going to look at a little bit later in this presentation? People, process, and dam technology. Who are the specific people, groups of people utilizing the dam at Lands' End? And what are the specific processes that we have in place leveraging our dam at Lands' End? And how is our Senshare dam supporting or enabling the people and the processes? Today, we have over 700 users globally, supporting users throughout the US, as well as UK, Germany, and Japan. To make the dam work for all of these users, we have quite a few user roles, most of which are either collaborative users, that's the largest group, followed by the full users, and after that, our super user group. The collaborative users, these are mostly our reviewers or our proofers. They're working primarily in the web client, and they're there to review proofs, add notes, and complete tasks. In the next large group of users, the full users, these are mostly our creatives. They're working in the Java client, placing images into layouts. They're requesting retouching or identifying those retouching needs, and they're finalizing the images. After that, we have our super user group, and these are mostly on the side of creative operations. They're working in the Java client and have all the same permissions as full users, but more. They're the ones ingesting images into the dam, adding and validating metadata, formatting the images for different output channels, and moving images along through the established workflows in SendShare. Zooming in a little more and taking a closer look at our specific user groups and the teams working throughout the organization and the dam, we have our internal clients. These are our full users that I mentioned on the previous slide. They're going into the dam using the locally installed Java client and looking for assets to place in creative and marketing collateral, both for print and web, as well as the writers that are adding and editing copy and InDesign. The next group here, we've got the business partners and stakeholders. They're our collaborative users, and they're accessing the dam from the web client and going in mostly today for reviewing and proofing. After that, we have the internal service teams, digital imaging, electronic publishing. These are our super users, and they're mostly on the various creative operations teams, and they're using the Java client. They're responsible for, as mentioned previously, they're responsible for ingesting the assets, adding the metadata, formatting the images, placing the images in catalogs, routing the proofs, and much more. And lastly, we've got the external vendors. They're in a variety of roles depending on the vendor. If the vendor is responsible for retouching or print in some way, pre-press, they have greater access to the dam, and they're using the Java client. If they are third-party marketplace suppliers, their access is restricted to only their own subdomain, and they're accessing the dam using the web client to either upload images for their products or to download images of Lands' End products. So next we move into process. We have a lot of workflows in place utilizing our dam. Something I touched on earlier is that it's important for our dam to support our print production and creative production workflows. A large part of that is managing work in progress assets. In fact, over 60% of our approximate 2 million assets in our dam are either in a raw or work in progress state. Some of the process involving the work in progress assets include building catalogs and making geometry variants for other markets, working with vendors in the system for retouching and prepress, routing and reviewing catalog spreads and PDP pages, and sending images through our digital imaging team to be cropped, formatted, and renamed for online channels, mainly our websites and other marketplace sites. So for today's presentation, we're going to take a look at one specific workflow in the process that we went through from start to finish, from mapping it to implementing the new process. We needed a process to work with a new retouching vendor. We had an established process with a long-standing retouching partner, but we wanted to try something different to make it more efficient and to work within a single system of record, the dam. So to support our department goal of devising image first workflow, which at Lands' End means taking a holistic view of an asset, not focusing too narrowly on the compound collateral the image is being used in at that precise moment, but instead thinking about all the possible uses and outputs for that image or asset. When it was time to set to work, we were very intentional and thorough in setting the direction for our new workflow. So we started by defining our objective, which was to create a streamlined workflow within a single system of record. We then spent a lot of time gathering as much information as possible to really understand the business requirements. And we even included, the retouching vendor too, but we talked to all of the stakeholders from every stage of the process. And then we talked with our SendShare system experts, our third-party technical SMEs. Afterwards, we mapped a process and then we started to test and iterate. We made sure to communicate out the what and the why for the new process and conducted several trainings, documenting everything thoroughly. And then we went live with it in December of 2020, right? Yeah, 2020. So now we're in the soliciting feedback and refinement cycle. It's actually proven really successful so far. We've had lots of great feedback, and we are now piloting a mini version of the workflow with yet another retouching vendor. All right, so what does the process look like on paper? Here's our process map utilizing swim lanes. It starts up here in the upper left-hand column with our electronic publishing team, and it moves through to our digital imaging, over to the vendor, to the art directors, and ultimately, after it goes all the way through the process, it ends with updating the layouts, the catalog, the book layouts with finalized, perfectly retouched images. All right, now this is what everyone's here for, I believe. We're going to take a deeper dive into the process and look at it step by step, starting with the retouching request submission. So our EP, or electronic publications team, generates marked up PDFs all within SendShare. That's what you're seeing here on the screen. They then edit the metadata for the PDFs to put them into a specific workflow that we have called image retouching external. You can see that here. The step is then set to retouching request. The assignment in this third field here is automatically populated because it never needs to go anywhere else. So that's an automation there. A deadline is put into the deadline field. And then if there's anything special to call out, that's annotated right here. Our DI team, or our digital imaging team, will receive an auto email generated by SendShare, but they also have a saved search to use as a task area within SendShare, or queue as we like to call it. And when they get these retouching tasks, they'll go in and they collate all of the images from the spreads within SendShare. If variants are needed, they make those within SendShare. If they're not, if it's minor retouching, we just overwrite the images. But they collect all of these images. They then relate them within SendShare using a group folder. And they apply a naming convention that's really important. That includes a code for the project. This helps keep everything organized. It also helps with project tracking and reporting later. After they've done this work to gather all of the assets together, it's now time to pass it along to the retouching vendor. So they go in, and at the group level, not at the individual asset level, but at the group level, they'll edit the metadata, keeping it in that same workflow, the image retouching workflow, and they change the step to sent to vendor, and they select the vendor it needs to go to. We very purposefully did not have this auto-populate because the goal is to eventually expand this, this workflow so that it works for other vendors. And so this was a very intentional decision here to leave the vendor's name out and just select the specific vendor that the assets need to go to. One of the great things, or one of the, I guess, the lessons learned whenever we first rolled this out is that it is really handy to organize everything into these groups within SendShare. By editing the metadata here, it means that there's only one email that's generated, rather than if you've got 10 images in here and you were editing the metadata for each image, you would get 10 email notifications. So this was a very important iteration that we learned after going live with it. It also keeps everything really tidy. It's easy to clean up. It makes for a really nice, organized task area. So after everything's been organized into these, related into these group folders, and the metadata has been edited to send the group to the vendor, they get an email notification. That's their trigger. They have the specific vendor that we're working with. They've installed the Java client on a shared server, and they have about 3 to 4 traffic coordinators that log in, all using a shared login. They go in there and they have their tasks. They can see everything that's assigned to them. Using the naming convention that you see here, they can see when everything's due back. You can't see it in the screenshot, but there's also a column for due date. And so things can be sorted and prioritized accordingly. And then within each group, they've got the marked up PDF, which tells them what they need to do. And they have the tips that they need to retouch. And sometimes they'll have some support files like color matching files, reference files. This next part of the process is a big divergence from our legacy processes. And it's also a huge win in the new workflow. So the images to be retouched are checked out of SendShare. They're not downloaded or exported, they're checked out. So unlike the old process of picking up images from an FTP site or downloading from a DAM, checking the files out from SendShare ensures metadata is preserved. It also means that everyone is working on the same file and fewer images have to be relinked in the books before the catalog goes to press later. So now the vendor has finished their retouching. This is the first pass of retouching, and it's time to return the images to us at Lands' End to the art director so that they can review the retouching. The vendor checks a low-res version of the file back into SendShare for the review, and then edits the metadata at the group level again, not at the individual asset level, but at the group level, and they'll change the workflow step to ready to review, as you can see here. The assignment field in this instance is auto-populated because the reviewer is always going to be the art director, so there's no reason to not have that automated. The art directors review the retouched images, and if images are needed, sorry, let me back up just a second. So the art directors are also getting an email notification. Everyone's getting an email notification, so they don't just have to periodically look in SendShare. There's a trigger. So the art directors get an email notification letting them know that they've got a new task in SendShare. They come into SendShare, clearly see what they need to look at. They review the images, and then if edits are needed, they'll send the images back to the vendor, and they do that by setting the step in the workflow. Again, at the group level, they set the step to edits needed, and they put in the vendor's name where it needs to go. And then you start the cycle over again. However, if the images look fantastic on the first pass and no additional work is needed, the art directors will go in to that group folder again into the metadata and set the step to return final high-res and back to the vendor. Lastly, the vendor returns the final high-res images to our digital imaging team. They follow the same steps where they're checking the files back into SendShare, and now they're assigning them to our digital imaging team. DI or digital imaging, they update the metadata for those assets to set the processing state to final, and they select 5 stars all within SendShare. And the 5-star rating that we're using is a clear indication of the final state of our brand assets. It also provides another means to search and filter for brand assets. So what I just walked through there, that's just one example of many of the process changes that we've implemented or are working to implement. We have a lot more initiatives on our roadmap. We're leveraging our DAM advantage to continue to add value across the organization and promote our DAM as an enterprise-wide solution. Some of those things on our DAM roadmap include, but they're not limited to, Lands' End marketplace expansion. We're already using the DAM today to support our expansion, but we're looking at additional automations to make that even more successful, more scalable. We are also in the process of building a brand asset library with all of the final assets and to give access across the organization to all of our final assets. We're gathering use case information for portals, such as a media library for our newsroom. That's just one example. We're also looking at expanding the scope of assets. So as you saw earlier in the presentation, 75% of our assets today are images, but now we're starting to add more video. We're working on what that workflow is for video. We're also going to take a closer look at getting the email, the final email collateral and the final social media collateral into our dam. And we're also beginning to explore an integration with our new PIM system. So it's a really exciting time at Land's End.
There you go.
And here's our contact information. I strongly encourage you to reach out to us. We'd love to connect with you. And we learn from each other, from our peers.
Mm-hmm. And I can say from experience that Richard and Natalie, you know, for those of you in the audience, are really willing to actually share their experience and network with you. And so if you do reach out to them, they're willing to take a call or set up a time to talk with you and talk about what they're up to, what they've done, you know, the pitfalls as well as the successes, so that you can learn and grow from them and vice versa. So this was a lot there. This was really great. And I know that people in the audience love to see, SendShare in action. How does the workflow really work, and what does it look like, and how does that go, and what are you doing? So that was really fantastic. Richard and Natalie, any final thoughts that you want to leave our audience with today?
I just want to echo, if you have any questions, so please reach out to us at any time. We're happy to work within the DAM community, which is an awesome group to be a part of. And please reach out if you have any questions. And thank you, Josh and team, for having us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Fantastic. So I'd invite everybody, all of our attendees here to, if you have questions right now, right off the top of your head, you saw something that was interesting, it kind of made you go, what about that? We have a Meet the Experts section here for a Q&A session. So you're able to go over to that and ask questions specifically right now to Richard and Natalie. And really, really thrilled. Thank you again for joining us today and taking the time to present.
Thank you, Josh.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.